want to speak to you about the past that you may think you know about yourself. If you're listening to this, you're already suspect that your life has never been ordinary, and you've always carried a weight that did not match your age. You carried a depth that nobody taught you, and you've always known that something in you moves differently. You are not just a person born with a gift. You are the continuation of a lineage that engineered your sensitivity, designed your intuition, and prepared your spirit long before you arrived. See, when you were in the heavens before there was a body, there was also a lineage that you were going to be attached to. And so once you entered the womb, there was an engineering of your sensitivity that designed your intuition and prepared your spirit before you arrived. God had his plan in heaven, and once you entered your mother's womb, your ancestors, your genetics that was passed down through your lineage began to engineer you. Your ancestors may not have left you money, houses, or even land, but they left you something far more powerful: their emotional memory, their spiritual intelligence, and their protective instincts, and their inner alertness, and their unfinished work. So, this is what, whether you're Black American, Mexican American, it doesn't even matter what culture you're from or what nation or country you live in, but your inheritance was developed just for you in your mother's womb. So this wasn't the kind that was written on legal documents, right? So it doesn't matter whether you're a citizen of a particular place, because this was written in the spirit. We are talking about lineage, yes, but the truth stretches across every culture touched by hardship. It's the same truth you find in Black and African bloodlines, Italian families who survived war and famine, Greek households that were shaped by conquest and displacement, and the Mexican and Latin American communities that is living through colonization and migration. And let's not forget the Somali, the Ethiopian, and the Sudanese families that is navigating conflict and diaspora. The Egyptian lineages carrying ancient spiritual memory, the Arab and Muslim households that are surviving political, cultural, and spiritual fragmentation. And I didn't forget the Caribbean families that were built from resilience and reinvention, the indigenous communities whose wisdom survived erasure, the Eastern European families that were marked by persecution and struggle, and the Asian and South American families carrying generations of sacrifice. All of them inherited something beyond flesh, a spiritual and emotional software built under pressure. And the ones who carry the strongest versions of that software, those are the anointed ones, the spiritually gifted, the ones who feel everything, see everything, and sense everything. So more than likely, I'm talking about you. This doesn't get talked about enough in the spiritual communities. When your ancestors lived under oppression, they had to develop powerful coping systems just to keep their sanity intact. So they learned how to read danger without words, how to shift the energy of a room with a look, how to protect their children using silence, story, and spirit, how to keep family together through coded language and unspoken rules, how to communicate emotions without breaking under them. Those strategies weren't mental tricks, they were survival, spiritual survival. And because they worked, those technologies were preserved, repeated, taught, retaught, and eventually written into behavior patterns so deep they became inheritance, relational inheritance. The emotional intelligence passed through stories, the spiritual sensitivity passed through rituals, the protective instincts passed through parenting, the generational wisdom passed through watching, listening, and imitating. And let's not forget the courage passed through lineage. It was the next breath. It's not DNA, it's not genetics, it's deeper than that. It is the living transfer of adaptive spiritual intelligence from one generation to the next. And the spiritual gifting enters. See, science has a name for part of this. They call it transgenerational epigenetic inheritance. It means trauma and survival literally change the stress systems of the body, and those changes can be passed to children. But spiritual communities, Black communities, indigenous communities, ancient cultural traditions had language for this long before science existed. They knew that the child who felt too much was carrying more than their own emotions. They knew that the one who sensed danger early was operating with inherited awareness. They also knew that the one who dreamed was holding ancestral messages, just like they knew that the one who couldn't tolerate lies was carrying generational truth. See, they knew that the one who carried sorrow without knowing why was holding ancestral grief. And they especially knew that the one who possessed spiritual perception was the one chosen to continue the assignment. See, this is where the story will begin to change. This is where we move from inheritance to calling. The anointed, the spiritually gifted, are not random descendants. They are the culmination of ancestral preparation. Your lineage knew exactly what to do with your gifts while in the womb because your lineage did not just survive. So it sculptured you. It refined emotional sensing. It sharpened intuitive awareness. It strengthened spiritual perception and passed all of that into the descendant with the capacity to carry it forward. And that descendant is you. That makes you not only special in the eyes of God, but you're also special in the eyes of your ancestors. And this is why you are always different. Not odd, not misplaced, not confused. Your ancestors marked you. God gifted you. Your ancestors marked you. Children like you grow up feeling older than their environment. You feel unspoken tension long before words are exchanged. You can sense someone's emotional state without a single clue. You feel spiritual heaviness before events unfold. When someone cannot be trusted, you feel drawn to protect others without anything in return because you carry compassion like responsibility. You don't know how you know. You just know. You inherited spiritual instincts that were sharpened over centuries. Your ancestors created this spiritual software under conditions that tried to erase their humanity. They passed it down expecting someone would eventually rise, not just to use it, but to elevate it. That someone is always the anointed one in the family. That heaviness you feel when you wake up sometimes, that is the emotional repetition of your lineage. It's not meant to crush you, but to remind you of what you were built for. Your urgency that you feel when something is about to go wrong, that is ancestral alertness, a survival code passed forward to keep you safe because of the many, many roads that you're going to have to travel alone. That sorrow that appears without a trigger, that is the weight of unfinished business. Your ancestors never had the freedom to resolve. That deep empathy you carry, that is the spiritual intelligence of a people who learn to live with compassion. They live with compassion in places that offered none. That knowing you can't explain, that is the ancestral voice inside you, keeping you aligned with your assignment. You aren't sensitive, you're equipped. You aren't too emotional. You carry generational intelligence. You're not overreacting. You're responding with the awareness of centuries. You aren't imagining things. You're perceiving what others cannot. This is what it means to be anointed through inheritance. You are the one chosen to break cycles, to heal wounds, to elevate your lineage and complete what others began. You are the one your ancestors hoped. They hoped for when they prayed without words. You are the answer to their unfinished chapters. You are the vessel through which their resilience becomes transformation. And you are the living proof that trauma did not destroy your bloodline. It created the leader it always needed. And this is where your calling begins. The anointed do not simply carry the past, they translate it. They do not simply feel deeply, they interpret spiritually. They do not simply inherit resilience, they activate purpose. Your sensitivity is not a burden, but a map. Your awareness is not a flaw, but a compass. Your emotional depth is not an inconvenience, it's a key. Your spiritual gifts are not accidents, but assignments. Your ancestors gave you the completion of your software while you were in the womb. Your spirit gives you the calling, and your life gives you the stage. And the world gives you the need. You were not prepared for a normal life. You were trained for a spiritual appointment. Everything in you is intentional. Everything in you is inherited. Everything in you is activated for this time. You are not just gifted, you are chosen. You are not just intuitive, you are commissioned. You are not just aware, you are the descendant that prepared for a moment like this. You are the one they trusted, you are the one they whispered to, and you are the one they marked. And now, you are the one who must rise. My grandfather said something to me one time when I was visiting the South. Myself and all my cousins, while he was asleep, took his car keys, popped the trunk, and pulled out candy. We knew he had a lot of candy in his trunk. Anyways, he learned of what we did. And so he fussed at us. It was no big deal. But he looked at me with my 10-year-old self and said, "You know better." And I'm like, "I'm not even the oldest. I'm just a visitor. You don't know me." In my head, that was something I can imagine myself saying. But I had a cousin that looked at me strangely. Our relationship began to change. And when we became women, she pulled away. I wondered, did she ever remember that? I did. So the next day, when he was out feeding the farm animals, I asked him, "Why did you say that to me?" He said, "Because I know your father. I know my son. You're his daughter. And there's certain things you will not do." And that was one of them. I never understood it. I never told my father. I never told anyone. But I'm telling you, it took me decades to understand what he meant. Maybe he was as spiritual as my father was. I don't know. But I didn't feel he knew me enough to say that. But he knew where I came from. And he knew what he and his wife birthed. And the same for you. Thank you for visiting my channel. Stay covered, stay conscious, and stay undefeated. I'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.